ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So, very systematic questions are asked by Mother Devahuti to her son Lord Kapila. If we see earlier, first of all, Lord Kapila described about the different symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purushottama Lakshana. What are the different symptoms of the Supreme Lord? Later, the Lord described why the Supreme Lord accepts material energy. Why that Purushottama, he accepts this material energy. Next, Lord Kapila described what is the effect of this material energy on the living entity. How the living entity becomes illusioned and captured by material nature, material consciousness. He becomes bound. So all these things were very nicely described by Lord Kapila. So now you can see what is the question Devahuti is asking. So the Lord had described the symptoms of the living entities, how they are captured. The Lord has described the Supreme Lord, and he accepts the material energy. So now Devahuti is asking that, my dear Lord, you have described earlier the relationship between the living entity and material nature. Correct? What is the effect of material nature on living entity? Now she is saying, please describe the relationship between material nature and the Supreme Lord. And she is saying that I understand that the Supreme Lord and his material nature or the material energy is the cause of both unmanifested and manifest material world, this cosmos. So please describe about this. This is the question she is asking. So, what did Lord Kapila describe the Supreme Lord as? That is very interesting, because we should not misunderstand that there is no difference between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. Because sometimes we may think like this, and this is how Mayavadis interpret. Suppose if a person says, I am Indian and Prime Minister is also Indian, or President of the country is also Indian. I am human being, President of this country, he is also human being. Correct? He is also Indian, he is also human being, I am also Indian, I am also Indian. So can I say, so this logic, by this logic, I can say I am president. What is this logic? Because I may say he is also Indian, I am also Indian. He is also human being, I am also human being. So I am president. No. On certain qualities, we may be having the same qualities as the president, but on certain qualities we differ. He may be Indian, I may be Indian, I may be human being, he also may be human being, but he is the leader of all of us and we have to abide by his orders. That difference is there. Similarly, the Vedic scriptures very clearly point out Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko va Bahudhati Vidadhati Kaman, that yes, the living entity is also eternal, Supreme Lord is also eternal. The living entities are conscious by nature. The Supreme Lord is also conscious by nature. But that does not mean living entity is equal to Supreme. What is the difference? The difference is He is one, we are many. And He is the one who supplies, maintains all the requirements of all these plural numbers of living entities. We are all dependent on Him. He is independent. That is the difference. So, that is how Lord Kapila begins first by describing the Lochana of Purushottama, that Supreme Person, His characteristics. So if you see in the verse number 3, those characteristics are very nicely described. That is how Lord Kapila begins his description. So what does he say? Anadir Atma Purusho Nirgunaha Prakrite Paraha Pratyak Dhama Swayam Jyotir Vishwam Yena Samanvitam. See how many characteristics are described. Who is that Purushottama? He is Anadir. He has no beginning. See? All of us have beginning, right? All of us, at least in the material world, we are all born one day. We are caused, we take birth one day. But the Supreme Lord, He is Anadir. He has no beginning. Then, Nirgunaihi, the Supreme Lord, He is not affected by material nature. Nirgunaihi. He does not have any interaction with three modes of material nature. So that is why he is called Nirgunai. Then Prakrite Param, the Supreme Lord is above the three modes of material nature. Even though the Supreme Lord, for the creation of this material cosmos, He accepts the three modes of material nature as His Leela, we will find this. But He is still above the three modes of material nature. Just like the example is given, the lotus flower, it may be in the mud, it may be in the water, it is still above it. So that is how the Supreme Lord is. Then Pratyak Dhama, the Supreme Lord can be perceived everywhere. He is called Pratyak Dhama. Swayam Jyoti, self-effulgent. Vishwam Yena Samanvitam, by whom this whole cosmos is maintained. So these are the characteristics of the Supreme Purushottama that is described by Lord Kapila in the beginning. Next verse onwards, he describes Abhyapadhyata Leelaya Saeva Prakritim Sukshamam, that Supreme Purusha, as his Leela, he accepted Prakritim, Sukshma Prakritim, which is that Prakritim Devim Gunamayim Vibhu, that which is invested with three modes of material nature, the Supreme Lord accepted as his Leela, as per his pastime. This is also one of the pastimes of the Lord, that he wants to reclaim the fallen conditioned souls. So he accepts material nature and manifests this material world for us so that we can come here, try to enjoy, and he makes an arrangement for us. Gradually we can understand and come back to him. So it is his Leela. Then next, further he describes what is this Gunamayir Maya, what is the effect it is going to have on the living entities. So there Lord explains, divided into varieties by threefold modes, material nature creates the forms of the living entities. So then what does it do? The material nature, it creates the different forms, different species of life, right? Then the living entities are sent by the Supreme Lord, and we start identifying ourselves with this material body and with material field, and we start performing activities. Those activities are actually done by three modes of material nature and Prakriti, and I ascribe it to myself. I am the doer, and then we become entangled and we enjoy and suffer in this material world. Correct? So very nicely Lord Kapila explained about first symptoms of the Supreme Lord, why he accepts this material nature, what is the effect of material nature on the living entities. And now Devahuti is asking, what is the relationship between the Supreme Lord and this material energy which he accepts? In relation to living entities, my dear Lord, you have already explained that yes, in relation to living entities, she bewilders them, she illusioned them, and the living entities are completely trapped in Maya. Correct? And now Devahuti is asking, now please tell me, what is the relationship between the Supreme Lord and this material energy? Now you see, Prabhupada gives a very wonderful example. Let me see how many of you heard that example in the purport. Anantarupa. Very interesting example. See, two things. Material nature in relation with the living entity, material nature in relationship with the Supreme Lord. That example is given by Prabhupada. Shantanu, Mathuresh, Sumanor. The example is given is material nature is like mother for the living entities and wife for the Supreme Lord. You can see the same woman has two different roles. For the children, she is mother, and for the husband, she is wife. Correct. In these two roles, she behaves differently. She works under the direction of the husband, but children are under control of mother. She controls the children. Correct? That is how it is. So this is a very beautiful example which Prabhupada gives to illustrate how material nature works in relation with living entities and it works in relation with the Supreme Lord. So that also we know even in Bhagavad Gita very clearly Krishna says, this material nature is called Mahat Yoni. It's a great womb. Yoni means it's a womb. And in this womb, the seed is given by father. Aham bija pradapitaha. See, very clearly says. So as the father, the Supreme Lord gives the seed. And very clearly Bhagavad Gita says that material nature is completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. In the 7th chapter, it is said in Bhagavad Gita, that is 13th verse, in that it says, Tribhir gunamayir bhaver ebhihi sarvam idam jagat mohitam nabhijanati mam ebhya param avyayam. Deluded by the three modes, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So Krishna is very clearly saying, the living entities are deluded by three modes, and because of that, they do not know me who am above the modes. So there Krishna has made it very clear. Next verse, again Krishna explains what is that relationship between material nature and him. Devi esha gunamayi mama maya durataya. This is my maya. And it is invested with three modes of material nature. Devi esha gunamayi mama maya durataya. And then he also gives a method how to overcome the influence of maya. Mameva prapadhyante maya metam taranti. Then again, in 9th chapter, Krishna again explains about the relationship between him and this material nature. Maya adhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Krishna very clearly says, this prakriti, this material nature is working under my direction. So, this is a very beautiful example which Prabhupada gives to explain about how material nature plays two different roles, just like a woman. That is why it is called Prakriti. So Prakriti plays two roles. like a wife controlled by the husband, and like a mother which controls the children. So this question is asked by Devahuti, that, my dear Lord, you explained already that in relation to the living entities, Maya bewilders them, completely controls them. Now please tell me, in relation with the Supreme Lord, how is this Maya? How does it act? This question is raised. Prabhupada points out another very important thing. If you see here, the question which is asked is Prakrite Purushapi Lakshanam Purushottama. This is very important. Previous verses, living entities are also described as Purusha. But living entity is never described as Purushottama. That also we should note it very clearly. Sometimes the living entity is described as Purusha for the reason that the living entity also tries to enjoy like the Supreme Lord. Because of its tendency to enjoy, it is also called Purusha. But the living entity is not described as Purushottama. Now here you can clearly see Prakrite Purushyapi Lakshanam Purushottama. Please describe this Prakriti in relation to Purushottama. Earlier it was Purusha. Prakriti in relation with Purusha, the living entity which tries to enjoy this material nature. So even though sometimes the living entity may be described as Purusha, but still it is not Purushottama. Still the Supreme Lord is distinguished from living entity by using this word Purushottama. In the Vedic literatures, it is said there are three Purushas in this material world. One is called Purushottama or Uttama Purusha. Another is called Madhyama Purusha. And another is called Adhama Purusha. See how nicely the Vedic literatures, even though sometimes the living entity may be called Purusha, he is called Adhama Purusha. And who will tell what is Madhyama Purusha? Paramatma, yes. The Supreme Lord in His manifestation as Paramatma is called Madhyama Purusha. And the Supreme Lord personally is called Uttama Purusha. So, as Adhama Purusha, even the living entities in this material world is called Adhama Purusha. Otherwise, in the spiritual world also there are living entities. They are not called Adhama Purushas. They are called Nitya Mukta. Nitya Baddhas are called Adhama. Prabhupada, he gives the example that actually if you see in a state the people who are outside of the prison house are more in number than the people who are inside the prison house. Similarly, the living entities in this material world are very few in number in that sense. There are living entities who have never come to this material world. They have nothing to do with this material world. They are called Nitya Mukta. They are always in relationship with the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. So they are called Nitya Mukta. All the associates of the Supreme Lord, they are all called Nitya Muktas. And we, who from Anadi time, Anadi karma phale, padi bhavar navajale, from time immemorial, who are rotting in this material world, they are called Nitya Badnas. So we are called Adhama Purushas, those who want to enjoy like the Supreme Lord. Nitya Muktas, they want to serve the Supreme Lord. Nitya Baddha, they want to enjoy like the Supreme Lord. And that is why they are called Adhama Purusha, lowest of the Purusha. So we come down in this material world in the name of Purusha, but actually we are fully controlled by Maya, fully under the control of Maya. In illusion, we think we are Purushas, we are enjoyer. So that is also very nicely being described by the Supreme Lord Kapila here. Another very important aspect which Prabhupada explains, the living entities which are Adhama Purushas, when they fall in this material world, they fall in different categories. When they are influenced by the modes of material nature, which is of higher nature, Sattva Guna, they can still retain their original spiritual qualities faintly. When they fall under Rajoguna, it is not visible. And when it is under Tamoguna, it is practically extinguished. And that example is given, it is just like the spark falling out of the fire. When it falls on dry grass, very good possibility, if you fan it, it will again grow into a big fire. So we can revive in goodness, the living entity can revive their consciousness back to Krishna consciousness in the mode of goodness. In Rajoguna, it's only a faint, understanding of activities is there, but activities in the mode of passion, being illusion. But in Tamoguna, practically it is dull. The consciousness is completely covered. So that is like falling on the ground and then falling in the water. When the spark falls in the water, for practical consideration it is extinguished. So this is the effect of three modes of material nature. So that is being very nicely described here by Devahuti asking these different questions. And now the Supreme Lord, he will start explaining about whatever Mother Devahuti has asked. How this material nature is in relationship with the Supreme Lord. How this material world becomes manifest completely under the control of the Supreme Lord. So that will be further described. Rantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.